What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Novichenko Whips YouTube channel. I will PCV you later. So, if you were on our last video, you probably saw my grand excitement at our Ringland failure on our stock EJ 257 short block. So piston number 4 had Ringland failure, which is pretty much this one right here. Luckily, all the piston walls everywhere look pretty good. Something I didn't tell you, but I soon realized after doing that video, is we have a second major failure that happens in Subaru engines. Can anyone guess what that is? I can give you the glorious sound that is. Ain't supposed to do that. And I'm getting like half a millimeter or millimeter of play. Can you guys see this? Can you see that piston hanging out? Not supposed to be doing that. And I hope we won't have to buy a new crankshaft, but we might have to. When we found out that the piston is toast, you definitely need to buy new pistons. Of course, better to upgrade to a forged option. We're gonna take a look at the rods. If the rods are okay, we'll see if we keep them. It would be nice to go full forged, so rods and pistons. It's not too difficult or too expensive to do that in all in one swoop. You don't want to change your pistons and then, have something happen to a rod down the road. And we're going to see the condition of cylinder 2 here, because a Subaru crank, a nitride coated crank, I think the last time I built an engine it was like $300-400. I won't be surprised if it's more now. As you recall in the last video, we already pulled out all of our bolts. So the short block bolts that hold the two case halves together are pulled out. Now it's just the task of figuring out how to split it, because there is a lot of RTV silicone holding these two pieces together, and I want to do it in the smartest way possible, kind of using some deduction, if you want to call it that, or trial and error, poke and error. So join along. Okay, I know last time I figured out that it's quite important to give you guys good lighting, so here you go. Voila! That's much better. Again, let me show you this. No other rod thing here does that. So it's a toss-up of how our rod bearings look. They probably don't look good, but I hope the crankshaft is not scored and scratched deeply. And I hope it's salvageable. Hopefully, it would be better if the rod cap and the rod took the beating instead of the crank, in my opinion. But we shall see. Okay, this thing's been laying here for days, and of course it's not going to split on its own, although I may have been wishing for that. But we're just going to figure out a way to separate these pieces. So I'd recommend, kind of carefully find some places where you can... will you look at that? Right in here, you've got these two surfaces that are quite close together. Make sure you have all the bolts out of everything. There's like a 10 mil here, a couple in the back. So just kind of really gently placed it on there. You can see I've got a crack going already. And so you want to do it kind of evenly across everywhere. There are some directional pins along the engine, so don't forget that. I'm going to move this junk out of the way, my trophy. I'll be keeping this to tell the tales. Need more space up in here. Got two little 10 mils sticking out here. I'm just going to screw them in. Make sure we have more working surface. So I can see the crack has started to move back, and so we're really close to having this be fully apart. And of course, you just want to be gentle and take your sweet time. Yeah, I don't want any pitting anywhere. And all of this looks like a block that's never been opened from factory. By the quality of how nice and even all this silicone is, it would be difficult, I think, for a person to do that by hand. So I presume they use some kind of machinery, some kind of automation, some kind of automated systems to do that really nicely. Yeah, it's coming apart. You can see the crack started moving to the back. I'm just gonna take it really easily. A lot of people will grab also a rubber mallet. So let me see if I have one. Possibly not down here. But if you have like a nice rubber mallet, you could tap it, kind of trying to separate the two sides apart from each other. Yeah. I don't have one here. It's probably somewhere elsewhere in the house where we're doing construction. But yeah, I'm super excited. I'm excited. Again, I'm sure at shops and people that are in a rush to rebuild their engine do this way faster than me. I am like going leisure pace. I'm trying to like learn. I'm trying to look at stuff, see what I don't yet know. Probably gonna look up stuff on the internet. I'm excited for this learning experience. That's my approach. And thankfully this doesn't come out of a car that I need to drive tomorrow to work. So my recommendation is if you own a Subaru, an STI, WRX, maybe keep it semi-stock if it's your only mode of transportation. It's not that a fully modded built WRX STI won't be reliable. It's a question of how long it'll be reliable to you. It seems like that's always the case. Like, these cars are built with performance in mind. It's a performance engine. People want performance out of them. Even if you babied it, maybe someone before you didn't. And so it's a great car to have, but I would have a backup. In all my experience, you want a backup. You want a good old Toyota or Honda maybe, or some kind of commuter beater that will not start knocking on you for whatever reason. But that's part of the excitement of owning a Subaru, you know? Part of it. Part of the life. You know, it's the same thing that all the German car guys will tell you. It's you know, they're picky, but they're awesome. Awesome to drive, awesome to own. Say this short block weighs a good, I don't know, 40, 50 pounds in this kind of stripped condition. My last part that I'm stuck on is back here, and I'm not finding any great place to wedge into, so I'm just trying to be easy. Trying to take it easy on it and see if I can get it to split at the bottom here. If it's not gonna go, I'm just gonna go get a little really, really narrow chisel and kind of find a crack to split up. Although I don't have that rubber mallet, I'm just gonna give it a couple taps on this piece here, it looks pretty reinforced. It's not gonna hurt it. There we go. That was easy. May have spent a longer time with the rubber mallet doing that. And so, what I'm gonna do is lay it on one side, probably on that side. Yeah. Okay. Ta-da! Beauty. So, first and foremost, we can look at the main bearings. I see we still have our O-ring. Stuff is in good shape by the looks of it. So, main bearings, from what I can see on this case half, they look pretty good. We're gonna run our finger over them. You've probably seen people do this in various videos. So that's the back of the engine. This is the front of the engine. So there's some wear. So you can see the lines, but you cannot feel any of that. Just running your finger over it. So this is really good wear. And to be honest, I've never heard about Subarus having main bearing issues. So in my build, I'm most likely gonna keep these. And so here's our cranky boy. It's so interesting how short the crankshaft is in a Subaru. And imagine you have your nice and heavy flywheel bolted to that. There's a lot of weight on those main bearings. So sometimes I think people do see additional wear either on the very rear one or the very front one, especially when people run those extremely lightweight crank pulleys. I'm guilty of running one of those before myself as well, right? It's supposed to be, faster throttle response, but imagine they have a somewhat heavy one from the factory here because there's a heavy flywheel on the back with a clutch on it. That whole assembly is quite heavy. So I've seen people say, well, if you wear or if you put on a lightweight flywheel, you could probably lighten up the front, but still that harmonic balancer for the front does a great deal, or just stick to like a factory styled because it's gonna pay you dividends. And so look at the crank itself. The crank looks pretty good as well. The only slight wear is like, again, in the back there. These all look fine. The front one looks fine. So now we're gonna pull out the crank and take a look at the other case half. Bear with me. It's kind of cool because you can just, it's kind of stuck in there. I don't know if this is, okay, this is mostly a reason because of the rear main seal. So that's your rear main seal. This thing is very prone to leak. Oftentimes you got to change these out on the Subarus. This one is still pretty soft and malleable. I don't know if I would reuse it though. If you're in here, you should probably replace the rear main seal. On the front, I'll show you there is no seal. You pretty much run your oil pump off of there, so any kind of oil seepage would not be a concern through that main bearing. Of course, the rear main seal keeps the oil in and the dirt out. You guys ready? Ta-da! Look how cool that is. That is super cool. I'm just gonna lay this over here on the side. Our cranky boy. And let's inspect the other case half. As I mentioned, the rear main seal sits flush with this surface. If you push it in too far, it's known to block off this little trench, and that trench mates with the trench on the crank, and you have oil in there. You can see the two weep holes, or I don't know if those are feed holes or a drain hole, but anywhere there's oil in there to lubricate the crank additionally, and so you could get a major leak out the back here if you're not careful installing that. Inspecting the rear main seals, everything looks pretty good as well. Very similar to the other side. There's some minimal wear here, but I can't feel it with my finger. It's just a tiny change in color. I'll most likely not even remove the main seals. We're gonna, of course, clean the case halves. Any and all of this RTV needs to be taken out. But of course, when you assemble, we're gonna be paying extra close attention to the O-rings everywhere. The next part, or the main person of interest for us, is the crank. And then number 4, was it number 4? It's this guy. Yeah. All of these are fine. This one is, oh yeah, this one is like very rough. These, there's no bite. That one has a bite. This one has a bite, number 2. So I'm gonna flip it over. We're going to take off these bolts and let's hope our crank is not chewed up. Just to make it easier to view, I'm gonna place these case halves down. So cool, you could just split your block in half. Okay. All right, these are just a regular 12 mil on here. I'm pretty sure that they're gonna be pretty tight. I forget the torque spec on the factory bolts for the rod caps. 13. Talk about it. I need to get more organized in there. Please come off easy. So, yeah, this is interesting now because you got kind of a free floating crank. See if I can take it off with one hand. I might need a second set of hands to hold it down while I break them loose. I'll be back with you. Here's a trick. So if you don't have anyone to help you, you can lay it flat, grab your ratchet, and so you have a couple points of contact. You can lay it on the table, make sure your socket sits flatly into the bolt, and that way you have fulcrum here. Put your hand on here and just crank it up. So that one came off pretty good. This one, let's see if I can do it in this orientation. Yeah, not bad. I am excited to see what these look like. So, not too stinky. It's always the head bolts that are super stinky when you pull them out. These are kind of fine. That's those. And so, yeah, it's kind of stuck on there. Let's, oh yeah. It's kind of what I feared. It's definitely chewed up. The bearing. Okay, let me tell you what. The bearing has completely come off of the rod. So the inside of the mating surface of the rod where the bearing sits is scuffed up pretty good. Similar to the cap, it's scuffed up. I can feel some grit with my finger, but you know, this is pretty bad. And then here's the bearing. It's still on the crank and it's kind of, yeah, it's overlapped itself. So you can see one bearing has kind of run up on another. I take that back. You can see how they're still pretty well set in their spots or where they are. So maybe if I'm really careful, I can pick this bearing off of here and then really hope that the mating surface of the crank to the bearing has not been ruined. It's honestly a toss-up because it's very likely that the rod was spinning on the seized bearing, but it's also like it's possible that the bearing was spinning on the crank as well. Okay, that came off pretty easy. Let me see. I don't know. I'm not an expert, but I see wear. So there's the mating surface of the. Check out these bearings. Chewed up. It's even deformed. Look at that. Like this section is flattened out. It's wider than that section. Probably keep those for future visuals and examples. Pull that other piece out. Yeah, it's like flattened out on one end and narrower on the other. That is not what you want. So we have a very perfect visual. So here's a healthy crank surface as well as this left one, and here's a very unhealthy crank surface. I'm gonna talk to my dad. He's a machinist. Builds all sorts of awesome stuff for like all his life. I want to ask him, I'm sure I could measure this. I could measure this diameter and see how much mating surface there is, or what the diameter is of this piece. Because they sell oversized bearings. People rebuild these engines all the time. So you can buy a slightly oversized bearing, whether it be 1/1000th of an inch or 1/1000th. The question is, can this surface be salvaged? So what people do is they will grab a very, very, very fine sandpaper, or let's say that type of material, and pretty much sand it and gloss it back to this, you know, mirror finish. And because you want that smooth surface, you don't want any friction. And honestly, I'm running my finger over it. I can't feel a thing. It's just visual. And so I'll keep you guys updated on that. But this means I'm gonna start researching pistons, see how much it'll cost to get new rods, because in my eyes, this rod is a no-go. It's a fun thing to keep around, but this is not gonna work anymore. I mean, here's the thing. You could reuse these rods. I'll tell you why. The rod does not spin. The bearing sits in the rod, in the cap, and it together spins around the crank. And so the big deal is the crank mating surface, but all that will become evident. Like I want to do an easy budget build example. Thus, let's say if you're rebuilding your Subaru engine in your garage, you're probably not looking to spend max dollar. You're just exploring, learning, but you want to do it right. And so my goal is to want to do it right as well. I'm still going to remove all these, the rest of these, and I'm going to label them, which one went where, and we're just gonna move on from there. Thank you for joining. I've removed cylinder 1 and 4, and I can't say the bearings look great on these either. Look at that wear. That's not good. So I think these were asking for it, and it's just number 2 went first. I feel like there was an oiling issue going on for sure. Either low oil pressure or just overheat on oil. I don't know. Too much power with the E85 tune. But there's some definite scoring in these bearings. Similarly, cylinder 1, these don't look great either. I'm still working on getting number 3 off. Thankfully, the surfaces of these other mating surfaces for these other pistons, where the bearings go, the bearing surface is perfect. It's clear. So that's the difference. I guess, like, the oil's so important that, like, when it's there, you're okay. As soon as it's not there, pretty quickly you're toast. think it doesn't take long with zero oil pressure to spin a bearing. So if you see your oil pressure light go on in your car while you're driving, get off the road and shut it off and figure out what's going on. Because I don't know if this is exaggeration, but like it could be a couple seconds. Of course, when it happened to me, I was just driving on the freeway going 60 plus. And there was an exit, so I took the exit right away, pulled off to the side. No bueno. So again, don't run your car on zero oil pressure because you could save it. You could still save it, fix an oil pump or put oil in it or do whatever's necessary. But if you don't, you're guaranteed a rebuild. So let's just look at this. Yeah, number 3, pretty much same deal. Like, considerate wear on all these bearings. So some cars, when they go out, there's multiple spun bearings, but I feel when one of them goes, you get the nice knock sound and people then stop driving. But from the observations here, everything seems to have equilaterally worn. But yeah, the 2 spun bearings, they look the worst because you can see where there was no oil here and it just scraped away. Awesome. And then again, nice heavy crank. You can see the worst one is number 2, the one in the middle of your screen. And then the other cylinders, they look pretty good. So I think we're going to be able to salvage this and just get the correct size bearing after we measure this these diameters perfectly. If you're careful, you can usually store your crank like that, take up less space. Awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in. If I don't catch you until the next video, I'm going to start researching ordering some forged pistons and rods. What I should also do, and I recommend this to anyone that got like a spun bearing, is open up your oil pump. Be careful not to strip these screws. Maybe we'll do that right now. I don't mind. You want to open up an oil pump and see if it's still intact. A lot of times oil pump could break. There's a gear in here that's spun sitting on top of the crank here. So you have these 2 flat surfaces on the crank and they made up to the oil pump right here. And that's what spins the oil pump. And then of course you can see your front seal from where the crank comes out. And so it's possible that it was a bad oil pump, but not always. Trust me. It can be many things. Let's see if this will. Oh, woo! That might need a band-aid. Scabbed that one. Skibbity pop-a-da-pee, Mr. Scab Man. That one looks like it wants to strip. Maybe I'll have to put some heat to it. That one came off. I think you just need a good resistance. That one came off. Oh, whew. Come on. Last one. Play nice. Make all sorts of sounds in here. Your wife calls over. Are you on the toilet? Nope. Just trying to get a screw out. Yeah, that one's stuck. As I mentioned, got to be careful taking these off because if you strip it, it makes your day longer. Let's put some heat to it. This is what I was talking about. Ouch. Skibidi papa dee. Of course, all this RTV is going to come off. In a future video, we're going to, I'm going to show you how I plan to clean the case halves and everything. I don't know if pressure washing is a good idea, but we're definitely going to spend time removing RTV and then doing like a simple green bath in a big bucket or a barrel to make sure that we can get everything out of every cavity and every oil passage and coolant passage. Definitely important. All right, please come off now. There's always that one screw that just gives you a great time. My bicep is like cramping up. I'm trying to get this out of here. Come on! Get out of here! It's been a long Monday. Pretty good Monday. Yeah, this is tough. I'm trying to put my weight on it. And it's just not playing nice. Anyway, I'll think of something. I'll be right back with you. It's my idea of figuring it out. Blast it. Whew. Oil is kind of flammable. We've been at that for a while. If anyone has some recommendations on how to better take off these screws, please let me know. Because I want to get it off without enduring this type of pain and frustration. Let's see if I have a different bit in here that's like chunkier and wider. It will sit in there better. I mean, the bit I have is pretty good. We'll just try a chunkier bit. Come on, Mr. Bit. Beaten. Oh, come on. We've given you all the special treatment. We've given you the heat. You're just not playing good. Not playing nice, mister. Okay, I'm gonna loosen these others. They're all pretty loose already. This thing is hot. I've like heated it up pretty good. It's just this one has chosen to be a pain today. So far, everything on this engine was very smooth sailing in terms of disassembly, which I'm happy about. Sometimes you'll run into a engine that's just no bueno. You have no idea why certain decisions were made on it in terms of how people installed stuff, how they screwed it in. This might, but I feel like that's just gonna strip it even more. Please work. Nope. I don't want to have to screw this one out of here, but we shall see. Oh, I meant drill it out. Drilling out's never fun, but it might have to happen. I was really wanting to show you guys the inside of the oil pump. This is a pretty good bit. No, that's not grabbing at all. Anyway, until next time, thank you for tuning in once again. Hopefully this was entertaining. Maybe not my singing. But next time, we're going to have this oil pump opened up. We're going to inspect it. If it's all good, we're going to reseal it. And I will let you know about the new pistons and rods. And then I'll have some cool footage of me and my dad refinishing this cylinder 2 rod bearing surface area. Peace out. Thanks for liking. Please do subscribe so I can see you next time. Thank you for all the comments. I try to answer every comment, and I appreciate you all. Bye.